All of you have provided very engaging testimony in particular areas of expertise that you have, and of course that's very helpful. But for us as policymakers, it's always helpful to take a step back and look at things from the high altitude. And Congressman Bartlett said it quite well. I think we need an orderly transition to a more sustainable energy future, and you all have a role to play in that. Now, the question is, how big is that role going to be? What chapter of a very large energy portfolio can you provide? If you will, using your expertise about the variety of technologies that you all are using to make money, and if you had a best case scenario as to the potential expansion of all these opportunities that are obviously going to have to be done, integrated in an environmentally sensitive fashion, but talk about how big the potential here for this chapter of our overall energy portfolio. Will you potentially meet 10%, 20% of our overall energy needs in the country?
You know, I can tell you from our point of view that for a company like Targeted Growth, it's actually quite quantifiable. So if you look at camelina, which is this canola derivative, we should be doing 100 million gallons in 2011-ish. That'll grow to maybe 200 million gallons, basically a drop in the proverbial energy bucket. The sugar-based corn ethanol I was speaking about, which really is a next-generation technology where you're doubling or tripling the amount of energy per acre that a corn farmer can get. That's $1 billion, so $1 billion to $1.5 billion. So you're starting to make a dent, still reasonably small. But, yeah, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. It starts to add up. The third generation technologies, the algal systems we were talking about are limitless. You know, there are all of these great studies. If you took, you know, X number of square miles in just New Mexico, you could fuel the whole country. You know, those sorts of scale-ups aren't really the right way to think about it, but the right way to think about it is it's massive. And, you know, I'm very comfortable saying that all terrestrial-based oils that go away, if they're replaced by a biofuel, it'll be a single-cell organism. So I would think of that as 100 million, billion, infinite is the way to think about it.
And in terms of the overall energy portfolio, how this potential, and if all of you could add to this, would make the percent that it would make up of our overall energy portfolio, I think it'd be helpful to know your best estimates. Best case scenarios on continued development, sustainable policies that promote it, exceptions perhaps for regulations that adversely impact small businesses, ongoing development of small-scale distributed generation, new technologies that are coming online that will integrate even more types of biomass.
Well, if I could respond in the ethanol industry, we certainly believe in what others have predicted as well, about 15 billion gallons easily from corn and other starch sources in the United States, and that's certainly technology that's there and can be expanded quickly, and we're doing our share to do that. As far as the cellulosic industry, just from the corn stover and the wheat straw that's out there, we've got probably another 15+ billion gallons. Now that's going to take a little bit longer. We really have to have a progression. We're going to build a pioneer plant really in Hugoton, Kansas, as I mentioned earlier, and that's 12 million gallons. That's not very big, but that's a spot where we can prove the technology. We probably have to build one more that's more full scale, maybe the 50 to 100 million gallons. And then at that point, so now we're up into the 2015 time frame. At that point, if the financial markets are there and the proper marketing incentives are there to ensure that we can get that financing, then you can start to really expand that industry. So now you can start to see that 15+ billion gallons coming from things like agricultural residues. After that, we start to get into, and we believe at the same time we need to continue to develop things like the energy crops. So either whether it's wood energy crops in the case of hardwoods, or whether it's grass crops that can then go again to marginal lands. And even with switchgrass, the current strains, and we are working with small business partners too to develop some of those strains where we're talking on the order of 1,000 gallons of ethanol from an acre of switchgrass. So those start to open up new lands that are not necessarily usable for other purposes. And now, you know, I mean, my best guess personally would be another 15 billion gallons or so from those sorts of resources. So at the end of what I've just added up, it's 45 billion gallons. That's on the order of a third of our current gasoline usage. And, you know, again, maybe in the 2025 time frame or so. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, with the current renewable fuel standard, we're looking at increasing to 1 billion gallons of biodiesel production. That represents almost 2% of all biodiesel that's used in a 60 billion gallon market. So that's a starting point just in the next couple of years. Going beyond that, we know that there's enough feedstock out there if it's tapped, and there's a lot of untapped feedstocks, like even in these second generation feedstocks such as recycled waste oils and waste greases. If we can have the right technology in place that we can tap into all of those, and we can have an efficient collection system to bring all this into the biodiesel market, we could see that number easily increase to 5-6 billion gallons a year. So right there, you're getting close to 10%, and I think that's feasible, you know, over the next in the 5 to 10 year time frame. And then going beyond that, you know, the kind of work that some of the other folks here on the panel are describing in terms of increased feedstock, that's really the bottom line when it comes to biodiesel, is availability of feedstock. We can produce fuel as long as there's a feedstock to produce it from. And the new technologies with algae in particular is very exciting, because I think, you know, infinite it's a big number, but when you think about it, as long as we can produce enough on these marginal lands to meet demand, and at the same time address the points that Dr. Bartlett raised with conservation and actually trying to keep that demand in check through other technologies, things like hybrid vehicles, even hybrid diesel vehicles, which are now coming on the market, and even buses driving around this city are using those technologies now. By reducing those demands, it's sort of you know, we can get this balance, get this scale into a better balance.
Anybody else care to respond? Yes, sir.
I think several people have done a good job. DOE did a study a few years ago that said, you know, based on sort of current technology, you could do about 5% or 5 billion gallons of biodiesel from sort of current crops. And you'll look at sort of the emerging technologies that we really get to sort of, that's the bridge for the 5 or 10 years that you need to get to the second generation technologies. Does that make a huge difference? I talked to API and they said petroleum demand growth was growing 6%, supply was growing 3%. So at a 3% differential, you're now at $140 a barrel oil. So does a % or two make a difference in the global scheme of things? It makes a huge difference in the short term, because, you know, Goldman's predicting $200 a barrel oil, or they, you know, I've seen several different estimates. T. Boone Pickens, it's going up, and so small percentages make a difference until you can get to some sort of.
Well, I'm asking a very hard